So, all right. Now it looks like I'm recording. Okay. So let me share the screen and we'll do our little intro. And we'll bring on Miss Catherine.
I heard someone. Where are they?
I don't know.
I can't find them.
All right. I don't see anyone.
Maybe it was a, I don't know, ringtone.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think Mercury's in retrograde, Rhonda. I don't know what the problem is.
So I'm good for now. I do have the 7 slides.
Oh, I'm good. I'm ready.
So you're good now. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, here we go.
So I can reduce this.
Okay, everyone here, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool beans. All right. So, welcome to the Healing Chronicles.
Do we have Connie in there?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, great. So okay, welcome.
Okay, all right. We got past. I had some ideas about some things that I wanted to share before, because this is not what we're talking about tonight, guys, on the Healing Chronicles, part two of white fragility at the intersection of white rage and white privilege, is an uncomfortable topic, and I truly believe that in order for us to grow as human beings, that we have to go to a place sometimes that's uncomfortable. And I'm just grateful to you all for being here, for being a part of the solution for the next steps that we have to take in order for us to have an equal nation and an equal world. It may not happen in our lifetime, but by putting the seeds of things in place, and to have the kind of momentum that we've had since George Floyd incident, um, I am I am I am sure that there is going to be some change. Uh, to the extent sometimes it feels like we may be going backwards, before we go forward. But in this particular form, uh, we have Miss Rhonda. She is going to manage some of the questions. If you don't want to speak up, they'll be in the Q&A. Since we have a featured guest today, we're going to spend some time speaking with our guest, and then we're going to open it up for questions. And if you want to be on camera, just use a little hand, your little hand emoji, and Rhonda will make sure that we call on you. We are not, we may be similar, we're all connected, but none of us, not one of us is alike. So there will be some differences of opinion. And in this particular environment, it is small, it is intimate, and it is non judgy. So feel free to speak your truth. That's the only thing that we ask of you, is to be honest and to feel okay with being vulnerable. This session is being recorded and will be on YouTube. This is my fabulous co-host, Rhonda. Rhonda, say hello to the people.
Hello, welcome.
All right. So for Healing Chronicles, I generally dedicate it to someone or something or some entity. And today is Harriet Tubman Day. And the Senate and the House voted on Harriet Tubman Day, March 6th and March 7th. Um, I didn't know, and I feel bad. But there are just certain things that aren't taught in our curriculum. And even though Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass are almost like the only Black people they talk about, we learned in school during Black History Month, this is something that I wasn't aware of. So, in some places they have events to honor Miss Tubman, and but so I'm here, just learned it. I want to put it out there and to show my vulnerability that, being an African American, a lot of our history has not been passed down or is revisionist history. So we have to do, all of us have to do, to take the strides and the steps to learn, to put in the work so that we will continue to not only be relevant, but take our part in history where we should be. So, Harriet Tubman Day, this is for you. All right. So, we are speaking today to this amazing lady, Miss Katherine Bainbridge. She's an award-winning director. I met her in 2017 at Sundance, and I have a funny story to tell you. But I'm going to start with, I'm going to show her trailer, and then we're going to open the conversation. So this is a trailer from her award-winning film, Rumble, The Indians Who Rocked the World. And let me know if you can see the screen, please.
There was a song came on the radio.
Can't see it? Okay. Hang on. All right. Okay. Let me pull it up. All right. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see?
Mhm.
Okay.
There was a song came on the radio, a guitar instrumental, and it changed everything.
Link Ray, it's rock and roll.
Rumble. Yeah, that's the one.
Rumble.
Hey, Rumble.
Rumble had the power to help me say, fuck it. I'm going to be a musician.
And then I found out that he was an Indian.
The music that we know here in the United States is fully supported by input from Native and Indigenous people.
Mr. Randy Castillo!
Randy had become one of the most influential heavy metal drummers in the world.
Mr. Jesse Ed Davis.
I particularly fell in love with Jesse Edwin Davis. He was a Taj Mahal, and Taj's album is what spurred me to rock more.
And here's your rockin' chair lady, Mildred Bailey.
From 16 to 20 years old, that's the only thing I listened to was Mildred Bailey. I just said, I want to learn how to sing like her.
Figuring out that these people were Indians, and then we started to ask ourselves, why didn't anyone else know that?
There was this key expression: be proud you're an Indian, but be careful who you tell.
All of a sudden, I was talking about Native American issues and big-time television. And all of a sudden, everything disappeared.
From Charlie Patton to Link Ray, Bobby Robinson invented the genre. Jimi Hendrix, the best in his field. Jesse Ed Davis, everybody wanted him. Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
This has gone too long under the radar.
Yes.
Mm.
Katherine, welcome.
Aw, thank
I
you
was,
for having me.
Welcome everybody to Cinematic Conversations. It's 7:30 in the Central Time Zone. We do
we're gonna
this
stop
every.
that. Okay. Yeah, I was I was rocking out, and accidentally hit the the pause button. Um, so I'm gonna tell you guys how I met Miss Catherine. We're in Sundance. It's 2017, and I don't know what was up with the weather, but there was so much more snow there that year than it had been in like I don't know if it was ever. Catherine, how many feet were we dealing with? Like
I
easily.
mean, it was deep snow. I'm Canadian. I was like, oh, this is a lot of snow, man.
And so, and no one had prepared me for the altitude. First of all, I'm coming from the Mid-Atlantic, and Park City. So I mean, it is like 7 to 10,000 feet above sea level. The air is thin. I'm at a party, trying my best to look cute in boots because I didn't know about the shoe game with all the snow, and I love house music. So I was trying to dance to house music and I was like, ugh. So I needed a moment. I was like, I can't even finish this song. Rhonda, you know about that house.
You lost your breath.
I go over in a corner and I'm trying to catch my breath. And all of a sudden, Catherine comes floating towards me. She looked like one of the fairies in True Blood, y'all. Let me tell you, she was just, it's like she had a glow around her. And she's like, hi, I'm Catherine. Who are you and what do you do? And I was like, I'm Manda. I'm a director. Oh my goodness. She started peppering me like straight up interview style. How do you like the work? What is your research process? And I was like, I was like that on the inside, but I couldn't let her know that I felt that way on the outside. So at any rate, and we kept in touch, and she said, I may want to work with you because I like what you're saying. And we did. And a few months later, she called and she was doing some research about a project on white privilege. And Catherine, I am going to pass the baton, and we'll talk a little bit more about Rumble later. But I wanted you to kind of open up and speak since this is our topic for the night. And since you said you are Canadian, we want to hear your perspective from the northern part of the world. So I'm going to pass the mic.
Okay. I remember that night, and I remember you to that. Like, I mean, of course I remember, but I remember that moment, and I was gravitated right towards you because you're this bright light that's like full with all that we see her with right now. But she had it in the room. She was clearly the person to go to at that moment in the with all the people there. She was the person everyone was gravitating towards. It wasn't just me. But just to say, we called each other. Maybe I'll talk about the project we talked about together. Yeah.
Okay.
So I saw James Baldwin, the film about James Baldwin's writing, I Am Not Your Negro, and I was watching it, and I learned a lot making Rumble about race in the States and then subsequently race in Canada. And I'm married to an Indigenous man and have 3 biracial children, just as a context. But to be honest with you, and it's so embarrassing, but given that this is a safe space and a humble space, I thought of racism in terms of racism against people, racism against my children, racism against my husband, racism against Black and brown people, racism against Asian people. But I never thought of the other side of my white privilege, white supremacy, white rage. I didn't think of the obvious other side of racism, and it just was not part of any conversation I had known or understood. And the miracle of this moment is that those concepts, which I'm sure Black and brown people have known for ages, decades and hundreds of years, are now in the public space, and white people are having to listen and understand these things, and for the first time talk about them and think about them, confront them. And so my first moment of that, I've had inklings everywhere, but the first moment was really in that movie, the James Baldwin documentary. And there was this moment when that young girl, Ruby Bridges, in the school integration moment is she's integrated. There's this segregation movement, and she's integrating into white schools. And James Baldwin's voice is poetically saying, I felt so bad not being with her. There she was all alone, and I wish we were with her. And while I felt that too, I was like, oh my God, poor girl. What really struck me was those white people around her, these white women in particular, that were enraged. Their face, when you see that, enraged. And I was like, what is that? And as white people, white rage, we now talk about it as if it's new or something. And it's quite obviously not new. And when I saw that, I wanted to know, what is that? I'm Irish of heritage, and this is Boston. And I love, the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and the Dropkick Murphys and House of Pain and these kind of Irishy kind of cool bands that I just loved. And I was proud of being Irish. And I thought of, Irish as oppressed peoples. But I'm not American. I didn't, and I've since learned, Irish in Canada are no better than Irish in the United States. But I was really determined to find out who those yelling, awful, raging white women and men were at this poor young Black girl who's going to by herself, and they're threatening her like a mob. And so that began the journey to try and uncover the other side of the story. That's what we talked very much about it. I don't know if you want me to tell you the story of it. Is it appropriate to tell you the story of what I found out? Yeah. I'll try and see what everyone thinks. I was like, who is this? What happened with the Irish? So I got turned on to a book called, I always get it wrong. It's How the Irish Became White. And it's not to say, there's some people who say, oh, Irish people were slaves too, or enslaved too, but that's not true. They were not. They were indentured servants, but it was of no way should be compared to enslaved African-American people. But Irish were despised and hated upon their arrival. And there's a book called, Before the Irish Were Whites, that when they arrived with Jews and Italians, they were like hated. They were, scum, but they were coming in by hundreds of thousands from Ireland, where, as we know, Britain were colonizing the Irish hardcore in every way, shape, and form, in terms of taking everything they could. And then millions died in the famine. So people are escaping, they're running for their lives, and they're poor as hell. And they are 100% an oppressed people. And they were not slave traders ever, but they came from a society of oppression. And to me, it was like, how did they become those people in Boston? Like, how did that happen? What happened there? And so this book talks a bit about it. And in short, when the Irish came, they were at the bottom of the barrel, and they were made common cause for a short time, but a very profound time, with Black people who were freed, and in the North. It's the 1850s we're talking. So slavery's still in effect. And there's these beautiful photos of Black men and Irish men who made the New York City subway system together. They built it together. It's the moment that Barack Obama references in his own Irish history. It's this moment when Black and Irish were together in the neighborhoods. Like when you see the gangs of New York, it's not correct. It wasn't just white people. It wasn't just Irish people there. It was Black and Irish were there. It was mixed there. That whole scene was mixed. And what happened was, in short, is that the Democrats in the South, desperate not to lose slavery, for all that money in the South not to lose slavery, saw hundreds of thousands of poor-ass Irish people coming in. And there was a party there at the time called the Know Nothings. And they're like Trump today, but exactly the same. They're white supremacist people who thought the Irish were shit. And there was no police at that time. So there was gangs beating each other up, and they would go in and beat up the Irish, beat up Black people. They were awful, horrible, racist, horrible. The beginning, all that white supremacy that started so much earlier, they embodied it. And they were after everyone who, for them, it was Catholic. It didn't matter. It was like, they were just, they were hateful. And that the Irish were like, that's where the gangs of New York think of it. Like they had to protect themselves. Black people had to protect themselves. Everyone was worried. There was this beautiful one small moment, and it wasn't very long, when Black and Irish were together. And then the slave owning South started sending money to the North, to the Irish Catholic churches, which are like to be blamed to this day for what they started doing, because they started preaching from the pulpits, because they were lining their pockets and getting money for the Irish community. They started preaching pro-slavery. They started preaching anti-abolition. They started telling Irish that that's the way it had to go, because the South was buying their votes. And there was I don't know, 1 million people over a very short period of time came in. So you can imagine all those votes coming in, and the South wanted those votes. And that's essentially what happened. The Irish got bought and they turned. And part of the deal was they said, we will also start police forces. The beginnings of the American police force was started at that moment. And that's why Irish are at the head of every single police force throughout America, in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York, in Boston, in Philadelphia. It was all Irish who got that. That was the prize for turning. And what I want to say, what I want us always to remember, is there was lots of people who didn't, because history, happens, and the majority people do something terrible, but there's always this minority, strong, big minority of people who don't turn, who didn't want, and who fought hard. And that was, there she is. Yeah, look at those white women. Look at her. It was terrifying. I was like, who is she? And she's an Irish woman, I'm sure. That's Irish Boston. I was like, who are you? So that's a brief bit of the story. There's such emotional parts to it, but when there's a beautiful man whose name I'd love you to remember, and he was really best friends with, in a political way, with Frederick Douglass, and his name is Daniel O'Connell, and he's from Ireland, and he was the strongest abolitionist in all of Europe, and he's the one who forced the British in 1830 to end enslavement of people. And he and Frederick Douglass became fast and furious friends. And Frederick Douglass came over to Ireland and spoke to all Irish and went on a tour with Daniel O'Connell. And Daniel O'Connell said to Irish people, when you go to America, because there wasn't Black people really in Ireland at all. There was some dark Spanish people. Like my dad is, they call them Black Irish because they're Maori Spanish. They're dark-skinned Irish. But like he said to everyone, when you go to America and you see men and women like this, these are our allies. We're the same. So remember that when you go. So when Irish people came, there was a whole moment when Daniel O'Connell was fighting to end slavery and fighting with the church, the evil and corrupt Catholic Church, to not do what they were doing and create votes for those the enslaving South. And Daniel O'Connell was the center of that. And what happened was they started using, the churches got smart, and they used the argument, and the sellout Irish politicians used the argument that it was foreign interference in American life. And that there was this foreign Irish person trying to interfere with their life as new Americans. And I don't know, there's lots to the story, but that was the one, but for whatever reason, I couldn't see the way to tell it. It just made me so angry and sad. And I just couldn't see the way to tell it exactly. But then I met this woman recently, and I wanted to tell you about this, Amanda. This woman, her name is Carolyn Mcdonald, and she's a filmmaker in California, and she ran Danny Glover's studio for 10 years. She's a really accomplished Black female executive in LA, made lots of documentaries with him. And she, for the past 10 years, had been researching this very subject. And in fact, I wanted to tell you about it, that we would, and I said, well, I want to bring in Wanda, I want to make us a group. And she would like to direct it. And then for once I felt right, because even though it's about how the Irish turned, I don't feel like I should tell the story. And I just want to show you this book. I don't know if you can see it. This is the one she found. And can everyone see it? Can you see it? Can you see it? Yeah. Black and Green.
Civil rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. Rhonda?
And what it is it takes the story further, because the like the Black Panthers this is a story about how, like, paralleling the struggle between the Irish in Northern Ireland and Blacks in America under oppression, and how those struggles went. But in the time of the Black Panthers, they all went over and taught the Irish how about civil disobedience and how to do it. And in Ireland, there's all kinds of Black Irish people, and the songs and the music and that came out of these protest eras and these shared struggles. There's more sharing of struggles, like that one I told you about, Daniel O'Connell and Frederick Douglass, and then this one with the Black Panthers and the Irish in their rebellion struggles. And what Carolyn so brilliantly, the woman I'm telling you about, Wanda, that I want you to meet, so brilliantly got is she got the joy and the part that, because I don't want to tell the story of all the people who won and who turned and who became white and white supremacist, and I want to tell the story of the ones who didn't, but who were fighting and who are still fighting, and we're all still fighting. And now with Black Lives Matter, like it's all this, that continuum is the one that I want to be part of and be the story to tell. Doesn't mean we don't ignore the racists and the white supremacists, but that story, and she brought that. I didn't see it. I couldn't see it. I was just too embroiled in being mad about what Irish people had done. And she brought that story, a Black woman who sees the commonality between struggle. And then, and what also she brought to the idea of the documentary is music and art. And then all of a sudden the documentary is beautiful because it's filled with music and art from rebellion and revolution. And then there's one last story I want to tell you. There's a woman named Bernadette Devlin, who is one of the Irish, she's an IRA girl, but she's not violent, she doesn't blow things up, but she's a revolutionary girl. And she's well known in Ireland. And she was given in New York, you know the way New York's all, today is, by the way, St. Patrick's Day. And so, which is a frightening thing for all kinds of people. People are like, oh my God, St. Patrick's Day, you know. But she was given, she came to New York, which is a very Irish place. And the mayor gave her the keys to New York and said, you know, because the Irish, of course, love Ireland, like the Irish, like it's a weird thing, you know, and it's to get them back in their heads, like get them back thinking the straight, thinking right way, remembering who they are and their roots. But anyway, he gave her the keys to New York. And she said, you know what I'm going to do with this? I am taking this right now. I'm not keeping this. I'm taking this north right now. And I'm going to go give it to the Black Panthers because they need the keys to New York. And she says, I'm like, they're the true revolutionaries. And so she's like, this consciousness is there's another consciousness there. And that's what interests me to hang on to and to look at and to bring hope to the future. Anyway, there we go. Is that good?
It's good, and it's timeless, right? So whether it was 10 years ago, whether it's now, it's going to be the right time to tell that story because it's obscure, and I don't know how many people are familiar with it and know about it. And it's a love story, which I appreciate, right? Because you know, anyone who knows me knows that my theme is hashtag Let's All Be Human. So thank you so much for that, Catherine. And, you know, I have a funny story to kind of augment all the ugly stuff. I did 23andMe and Ancestry.com because, you know, we're, of course, Black people don't, 2-3 generations down, we don't know where we came from. So I wanted to do both of those, a genealogy test, and then compare them and see what they said. So inadvertently, some Irish came up in my blood, a percentage. It was Irish and Scottish. About 3%, and I think Ancestry said probably no more than 200 years ago I had a full-blooded Irish ancestor. So I was traveling one day and I was in an elevator with a guy, and we just started chit-chatting, and he's like, I'm Irish. I'm like, oh, you know, I have some Irish blood in me as well. And he looked at me, he took a beat, and he went, you're welcome, and walked off the elevator. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to tell that story. I'm going to keep that to myself. You know? So,
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, so speaking of, I mean, he was a bad actor. It's okay. And we have a resident psychologist. We have a resident psychologist that joins us regularly, and she may be able to talk about, the DNA of certain peoples who, through the years still kind of hold some of the hatred and the division that was sown a couple hundred years ago, and it still exists today. So I'll give her an opportunity to speak, Dr. Clyburn, if you want. Um, all right, we're still letting people in. So, but to kind of switch gears a little bit, Catherine, you said you've been very closely following what's going on in the U.S., and we know that January 6th was a horrific day in our country. Of the insurrections of the Americans or the patriots, white rage, stormed our Capitol, attacked our police. They erected a gallows. Um, they looked for elected officials to do God knows what with. We can only surmise, and smeared feces on the marble walls and floors, desecrating the Capitol. And now, uh, some of them are trying to change the narrative. The kind of like, I wasn't there, I didn't do it, it wasn't me. And it's beguiling to me because a lot of this was caught on or captured on camera or some kind of audio. And it's just trying to change the narrative. And I'm like, just straight up lying about their involvement. So the revisionist history is very typical. I'm not surprised, but I wanted to, and to me, I think that's part of the epitome of white privilege. And, as someone who studies human nature and you living outside the US, what do you think about what happened on January 6th and the subsequent trials that are going on?
What always shocked me in terms of their justification was like, oh, well, Black Lives Matter was way worse, kind of thing. That idea of was the first thing I hear all the time, which is so interesting to say. I didn't see anybody at the Capitol. I didn't see anybody storming the center of government. I didn't see anything even vaguely like that. I didn't see anybody attacking the police officers. I didn't see anyone putting feces on the walls of the democratic, institutions. But in terms of that rewriting, I often think of white privilege as the psychologist might know much better than I, but I was thinking of it, it's a form of narcissism. If you were to give it a personality disorder, it's a form of narcissism. And if you've ever known a narcissist, they rewrite the story to always make themselves the hero in every way. They can never be wrong. And they can never be guilty. They can never be bad. And that it's the epitome of white privilege to be able to change the narrative and not suffer any consequences of it. And it's like, we all know they're just not going to get the same kind of, if any Black or brown person had done anything even vaguely similar to that, the response would have been, I don't know, SWAT teams and I don't know what. And it's from the outside, it seems clear. It's horrifying. It's horrifying to see. It feels like the dissolution of any kind of social order, any kind of civil order. It seems like it's very worrisome to everyone. We're on your northern borders. I'm like, oh my God, is this going to happen everywhere? Is this what's going to happen? Is this going to happen in every city at all times? Are they going to do it again? And I don't know. I suppose I don't know if that's enough to say that we watch it every day to see, and we worry it's coming. We have it. Like the Proud Boys are from Canada. The original guy is from Montreal. He started Vice magazine, which was a lefty magazine, and then whatever transformation he had, he's like, he's mentally ill, honestly, but he's a mentally ill white supremacist, and we have it in Canada too. It's there, and we're all worried, and we're looking to the United States to crack down hard on these people. And to not let the narrative get hijacked by them, by this narcissistic white supremacist. I don't know. The whole system's riddled with it, but so's ours. So
one of the things I've been led to believe most of my life is that some white people are bad actors because they think that Black people and people of color are going to take something from them. Perceived power, the money, the women. And it perplexes me because historically, white people who came to this country, they took it from indigenous people, claimed it, they fought Great Britain for it, and they continually, to me, continuously strategize to keep Black and brown people from getting close to American freedoms. So Native and Black, and to some degree immigrants, are literally hundreds of years, Catherine, from catching up to white folks with regard to housing, with regard to salaries, with regard to just equity. So part of me feels that there shouldn't even be a term called white fragility, right? It's like you have this, and oftentimes around the world with colonialization, you took it, you pillaged, and you made it yours. So how can there be this thing called white fragility? I mean, do you have an opinion on that?
It's so embarrassing that it exists, but it's real. Like it's there, and it's like it's because white people have never had to see themselves in racial terms. Race race was to do with Black people and brown people, Indigenous people, Asian people. Wasn't to do with them. They're the normal, and everybody else is the different, and that's what race is about. So this recent change, and it is a big change, you know. In Canada, we're a bit of a socialist nation, and we have a very small film industry compared to you in the United States. But our government funding now is decidedly putting it's quotas on making sure that at least half of all the films made are made by women of color, like Black women, Indigenous women, and it's the focus of all of our institutions that that's what's going to happen. And the response by white people is unbelievable, but not out loud, because it's not kosher to do that. Some people out loud, but most people not, because Canadians are kind of polite and whatever. But in quiet white circles where I am there, I see the response to people that people have, and they're like, "This is like being a white male. It's like you're just a dinosaur now. You can't even." And people are some are mad, but some are afraid. They don't know how to talk. They don't know. They're fearful. They've never seen the world in this way. They don't understand the world. They're just coming to grips with something that white privilege even is a thing. They don't that systemic white supremacy is even a thing. It's completely new. And so they're afraid to talk because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be called out, which is an ego thing, you know. Don't want to be humble about it. They don't want to be corrected. They can't stand to be corrected. And they see themselves losing their privilege. I mean, the privilege is effectively in my community, arts community, being shifted. And there's a real reaction to it. And it's not like in the States, like we're just, we don't use guns really, and we don't really do that kind of thing. But there's all kinds of like, you know, talk underneath it all as people are trying to work it out. And so the fragility comes from if there's ever in a public forum where, because of these things, these changes, these systemic changes that we have in Canada, where Indigenous women, women of color really are taking a hugely important role in all of our institutions, cultural institutions, like it's really strong, there's now white people find themselves in forums of whatever kind, you know, wherever they are, confronted. They'd be like, you know, women of color will confront them, go, what are you talking about? Like, or whatever, they'll nail them, and they freak out. They just freak out. Sometimes there's literally enraged storming out sessions, or there's crying things, or just, you know, shock and whatever. It's just they've never been engaged in any conversations to do with privilege, to do with race, any of that. And but it's happening, and it's so wonderful that it's happening. So about white fragility is a thing. It has no right to be a thing, but it is a thing, and we just can't cater to it. That's all. It's like,
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I'm glad we're able to talk about it outside of our own circles. And I'm going to ask if, you know, Dr. Sonia, you or Melissa Houghton or Sid. Melissa's here from Women in Film and Video DC, Catherine, and Sid Walker Collins is here from the Chesapeake Film Festival. So, ladies, if you all had anything to say with regard to the industry and this idea of equity, now would be a good time to jump in. I will yield the floor. Or Dr. Sonia, if you wanted to say anything about the DNA stuff. No? Okay.
Oh, I had to find buttons.
Yay, Melissa!
That's a horrible picture. I was going to say, I was just in a call yesterday, and I do think the industry is paying attention, but I don't think the industry is particularly interested in systematic change. And unlike the rest of the world, like Canada and Denmark and Sweden, where there is an arts organization and art schools that can say, we're going to put X amount of resources to this, that won't happen in the United States. So when the NEA and the NEH were asked directly, can you give us the demographics of your grantees? We were told, no, we can't figure that out. And they're not going to, they're still recovering from Serrano's Christ and Piss that was 20 years ago in terms of, can we fund individual artists again? So if the industry is going to change in the stories and the representation, it's going to have to come from audiences and individual filmmakers who may or may not be supported in their work. So I don't think it's necessarily a big plus that we have more female Avengers now. It would still be nice to have a female story, or things like that. So that was one piece. And I do think this power structure is interesting, but I was also in a meeting with HR people yesterday on issues of DEI. And we were addressing the issues that Black men feel that they're, because if you hire a Black woman, you can check off 2 boxes. They're not feeling that they have opportunities for advancement. I'm not disagreeing with people checking. I am disagreeing with the checking off boxes crap, instead of really saying, how are we bringing everybody up? And then who's getting that position? So I think the industry changing, I'm not seeing systematic changes. On the other hand, I'm delighted with some of the work that's being done right now at the independent level. But I think funding in the United States to really, there's some money going. It's interesting in the last 6 months. In fact, today, Sundance announced they're doing 2 BIPOC focused funding initiatives that'll be opening soon. But do we know that it's going to last next year? Do you know that it's going to last the year after that? Is it really systematic or it's reactive? So those would be, I always have an opinion.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it. Connie, and I don't know if you're there, if you had an opinion or you wanted to add something, let me know. BIPOC for those, there she is. Hey!
Hey! I'm here. I tend to agree with part of what Melissa said. I'm doing a lot of public speaking on the DEI stuff. And it feels like it's the hot button. It's the hot topic for right now. I'm not necessarily feeling like it is going to last. It doesn't feel like what Melissa said, systemic change. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like we need to check the box. We need to say we brought in a speaker. We need to say that we, did some training. And then they check that box and they go back to business as usual. In fact, one of the keynote speeches that I was asked to give, all of the senior executives were white males. And they said, is there any way you can do a talk about diversity, but just don't use the word diversity? They literally asked me that.
Oh my God.
And so I said, no. So then what they did was they had me come and speak to just them. It was a white fragility thing. And they literally had me speak to them until they felt better about what I was going to be talking about. We just want to make sure you're not going to pick on us and blame us for everything. And of course, anybody with their salt wouldn't do that. But it was just interesting. But I am getting a lot of flash in the pan kind of, can you come in and do a quick program? And they're not talking about a full, stay in for a 12-month engagement. We just want a workshop or a 2-hour, can you do a 2-hour presentation or a keynote speech or a 1-day workshop? And then that's good. Then we can say that we did diversity. And so unfortunately, I tend to agree with what Melissa's saying, that yes, we're seeing, and for a minute, especially right after George Floyd, when Black Lives Matter was huge, you were seeing a lot of, we're trying to get some people of color in this position, that position. We're showing, the diversity piece. And, everybody was jumping on the bandwagon of diversity. It was the cool thing. It was like the Me Too movement that was huge, flash. And then, I mean, and it's still there, but not the same way. The one thing I will say is that people putting up with bullying and ugliness and the stuff that both the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, all of that are fighting against, I am starting to see that as a deeper trend of people saying, you know what, I'm going to call you out on that because that's rude. Now, it always has the power, that pendulum has the power to swing way too far over to one side. So we're seeing stuff stripped out of movies or books or things like that. And to me, you know, you say this, just like Uncle Tom's Cabin, it's still out there. You say this was made at this time, Gone with the Wind was made at this time, it reflected these things. Going forward, we don't do that, but you don't necessarily erase all the history. So for instance, you know, at any moment, they're going to start looking at things like All in the Family, which was a classic and broke barriers. But of course, some of the things that Archie Bunker said were completely inappropriate, but that was intended to break the barrier. But in a minute, they're going to say that's out of order. We can't say that. And so I think we have to be careful of how that pendulum swings. But I will say that's the deeper dive that I'm seeing, is that people are pushing back to, no, you're not going to just say anything to me. You're not going to bully me. You're not going to abuse me. You know, you're not going to do all of those things. So I'm seeing that being deeper than the diversity piece. The diversity piece is still, you know, check the box. We did diversity, we're good.
Yeah.
Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah,
Just relating to what you were saying. Just relating to what you were you were just saying. The I'm not going to say which broadcaster it is, but a broadcaster in Canada has a lot of BIPOC productions in development. So they get to tick boxes that it's all in development. And then I heard from someone who's a big distributor who was looking at some of the work and called them and said, the head broadcasters, who are all, by the way, the whole upper echelon is all white, and saying, so the diversity categories, you know, being ticked, they get into development. But as we all know, anyone in the film business, development is great, but you want production. You want to make it. You don't want to just write it and do nothing with it. You want to actually make it. So all these things in development that looks good, but this distributor called this broadcaster and said, well, listen, like these scripts, like they're not, I don't know, they're not developed, like you're not, I know they're not good enough. And what are you doing about that? Like, I want to do stuff, but you got to do stuff. And this head white person who was head of programming said, oh, this is Indigenous and we can't say anything. And we're too afraid to say anything, to give notes. So I'm like, okay, in every way that is so disgusting, because on the first level, it's like you're humoring the people who are getting the money, and you're not actually engaging in a real relationship with them. And secondly, if they're not learning anything because you're not helping them advance. These are oftentimes young people that are starting in the business and need notes and need to improve their craft. If you're not capable to give the notes, then you should not be in that position. Like, you should not be there. If you can't give notes to Black or Indigenous people or whoever, you cannot, non-white people, you should not be in that position. And yet there they are. And so it's just like, so I agree with what everyone's saying. Like, systemically in Canada, there are systems that are changing, but the very top is still white. And until those people are replaced with people who are confident to give notes, to give human notes and about entertainment, and don't have messed up, fearful, they're fearful white people who are afraid to give notes, but in doing so are not advancing the careers of the people that they're giving them development money, but they're not advancing their careers to production. They're not advancing their careers to making their shows better if they can't give notes. I mean, yes, you don't want to give notes about what it's like to be a Caribbean person in Toronto, but you can give notes about human good entertainment stories and what might be missing or needed or whatever, if you're in that position. So it was just to agree with what you all are saying, that I think in Canada, we have the possibility, because now we're starting to see some people of color getting into positions of power, taking over those positions of power in my industry. So we'll see where that goes, because that's where the change will happen.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is that, as women of color and Black women and Black people, or just people of color, period. When we get to positions of power, we don't just think about, oh, I'm just going to hook up all the black people or whatever. I mean, we have a world view of things. There was a documentary done with oh gosh, was it Tony? No. I'm confusing my people. I'm so sorry, but it was with Maya Angelou, and Maya Angelou, she had done some theater work. I think it was called The Whites in New York. Someone, Ross, you may remember. And she said that in this interview that it was easy for them to play white people because black people have been studying white people for hundreds of years, and that you know they had to like back in when black people were enslaved, if the master frowned, they could get sold up river, or if they smiled, it could just any just the nuances of behaviors. And so when we get into a position, it's not about the get back or the hookup. It's about how can we be inclusive and include everybody because of what we've been through, because of all of this trauma. So I just think that our whole perspective is different. So we'll never be the kind of people that'll say, I'm going to treat you a certain way because we've been treated this sort of. We just don't operate that way. And as women, as nurturers, also, we just and in parts of the world, women have ruled for centuries. So it's not a new thing. And I just wish, in certain aspects, we would just kind of let that shit go, um, and open our arms. So, Catherine, I want to talk about
Manda.
yes,
May I say something? Yeah, just something
it comes
quick.
alive. All right, I called and I was like, well, she may not
I
want to.
know. When I'm shy.
All right, well, tell
Forgive me.
everyone who you are, Miss Sid Collins Walker.
Well, I first of all, I want to thank you, Manda, certainly, for this incredible forum, bringing us all together, and also Katherine Bainbridge for your unbelievably tremendous film. I just watched it 2 nights ago, and it blew me away. So we really hope to present it this year during the Chesapeake Film Festival. So we'll be back in touch with you
I hope
about that. It's just absolutely terrific. And we invite everyone in this forum to the festival, because don't miss Katherine's film. It's one of the finest things I've seen in a long, long time. But I want to say that I don't want to play the devil's advocate here, but I absolutely believe, like Katherine just said, that we are starting to see the change. I think the decisions, those of us who are in positions like I am in, when we make decisions that are appropriate for change and to help, or to activate, to be activists and to see that culture changes, we're seeing more and more of it. When we saw the Golden Globes recently, I was astounded by some of the positive things that are starting to happen. And I think if those of us who are in positions where we can affect change, we continue to make the right decisions, so more voices of people of color, of women, and Indigenous people of all kinds are heard. I think this is what will continue to be important. And as we're in these positions, be sure you hand that knowledge down. You hand that passion down. You hand that truth down, because someday we won't be here. So you mentor the whole way too. And it's a struggle, it's a fight, but I'm glad I'm in it with all of you. I really, really am.
Thank you, Sid. Neil Davison from the Shared Screen, or Kenneth Moore from Baltimore International Black Film Festival. Do you all have anything you want to contribute to the conversation before we talk about Katherine's film?
Yes, I actually do. It's a kind of a sidebar conversation I was having here with my co-producer JD. First of all, hi Manda. So Manda and I have actually talked a little bit about the Shared Screen. We're a fleggling nonprofit virtual theater company, and it was a bit of a pivot for me from being a professional actor in New York, where I had my own small production studio for web series and YouTube content. And as someone who's a creator, who is a producer, who's looking to foster and create works, I think in this, what the diversity conversation that often gets turned into checking the boxes, as actually Catherine was saying, what you end up, and also as someone who's recently in a prestigious educational institution where I watched this happen at Northwestern University, which is one of the top theater and film and TV programs in the country. And I graduated 2018. You see that pattern of not only white teachers, but also white students not being able to provide that feedback to each other. And there's two things that come to mind for me. One, and again, this has already been said, but I think it's so important to reinstate, the first step to having a conversation is to start by acknowledging that I am white. Like, as a white person, since you are not forced in a daily basis to acknowledge your own race, you can be raceless. Even when they started, even when emojis came out with different colored hands, like, I still know people who are resistant to use them, are like, well, why can't everyone's hands just be yellow? And I'm like, does this hand look yellow to you? But the second thing being that the actual true artistic value of diversity is to seek collaborators who have vastly different perspectives and life experiences than you do, because it enriches the work. And the first step there is a humility, because you have to say, I have a very limited view. It's easy for me to say that. I'm 24, you know, like I know I have a very limited view. That's why I go to Monda and I show up to these things and I say, hey, we're looking for new works. But everyone has to acknowledge, and especially white people who don't normally have to acknowledge their race, you acknowledge where you are in your own limited perspective, and you pursue diverse collaborators for the sake of then having real artistic conversations about the work, because it enriches it, it makes it more interesting, and it brings a immediacy and a vibrance to it that does not otherwise happen. It makes it more colorful, to be literal about it. But those are kind of my two points of the conversation here. Thank you, Vonda.
Thanks, Neil. Anyone else? Anyone feeling froggy? Want to jump? All right. So, Catherine, I learned so much by watching your film, and for those who haven't seen it, we would, we, of course, Sid says we don't, we want to jump the gun on the festival, but there are other ways also to see the film. But I learned, I learned a lot. It was a master class in music and in and I was thoroughly impressed. And one of the things that you brought up in the film is that Indigenous people were so ill-treated that they would blend into Black communities because of the persecutions that they face. And I thought to myself, we had it bad. So if we got Indigenous people coming into our communities and blending, so we can't tell who's who, what, who, my God, how must it have been? And how is it now? When you're looking at everything that's going on with pipelines and with reservations and not being able to get proper water and not, this COVID vaccine, it just continues. And so my question to you is, what made you want to produce this film, or direct and produce this film? Utterly amazing. And how does it continue to be relevant?
One thing, a story that this person who's the center, there's two people at the center of Rumble. One, her name is Pura Fay, and she's she's a Tuscarora woman who is with a singing group called Eulalie, and she brought back traditional Indigenous singing, female singing, and brought it into the mainstream. When Robbie Robertson toured the world, he took them, these four Tuscarora women with him, and they sing in harmony. They harmonize. And traditional Tuscarora, so they're like Iroquois, Haudenosaunee people. They harmony was full on traditionally what they would do, and women, Indigenous women, were like her, but her in particular. Let's just say her in particular for Rumble is the keeper of the knowledge. And a lot of stars and big musicians that came out of Indigenous culture and Indigenous mixed with Black culture, which is a very, very big thing, a hidden secret about the United States, a hidden story in America. And that's what really Rumble is about. It's an Indigenous Black history at the early roots of music. But anyway, a lot of the people that are recognized are men. You know, Charlie Patton, you know, the father of the blues is part Indigenous, part Black, part Scottish. But he, and it's, you know, on his matrilineal line, it was full on Indigenous coming down. So the songs that were being sung to him were those kind of songs, and he's Choctaw, were the songs that she's singing that we're hearing, you know. So when she talks about the blues for a fae, she's one of those women who carried the culture. So the men kind of got the fame, as it were, and there's these Indigenous women that are carrying the culture and carrying the knowledge. So in Rumble, she's one of those. She's one of those women. And so the story of Rumble is about the roots of American music that we know of so strongly, the Black roots, and none of it would ever, of course, be possible without the Black roots of music, without the Black influence on music. But it is that the Black experience, as experienced inside of an Indigenous land where there was mixing, is the part that wasn't told, and that's the secret sauce of it. You know, it's not that Indigenous people were more than or did it separately or whatever. It was inside of a Black and Indigenous experience that story was told. And the story came to us from C.B. Salas. He's an Apache guitarist who, like a really good one, and he grew up in San Diego area around there. And he, when Mick Jagger went solo, that's who he chose. When what's Rod Stewart on his tour, and you know how Rod Stewart can fucking rock, like Scottish rocker kind of dude, like rah, and saying he chose our Apache guy, who always reminds me a bit of James Brown, because James Brown is part Apache. So that like Stevie's like that. He's like really, you know, he's Apache, you know. And so Stevie was the one who came to us with the story. They did an exhibit at the Museum of the American Indian about the Indigenous influence on rock and roll, and it was a huge. They got very little money. No one thought it would be popular. And can I make a real aside here? Why no one thought it would be popular? Because Indigenous people have been disappeared so much, and what makes every Indigenous heart so warm is that Black Lives Matter always includes Indigenous people. They always say Indigenous, and the word BIPOC includes Indigenous, because they've been ignored and disappeared for so long that this moment is incredible for that. It's like that, to be recognized as existing, as there, as present, as not gone, as not disappeared, as not just an ancient relic of a stereotype, some sort of mythic creature, but a real and vibrant culture, still alive, still resilient, not suffering of genocide, but yet still here. It's like, that's so important in this moment, I find. It's huge in this moment. But just to say that so this museum thing happened, and they didn't think anyone would come because nobody cares about Indigenous people, whatever, nobody's gonna come. And it was a huge success. And it was like people were lining up around the block. It was a lot for Randy Castillo, who's the heavy metal drummer, you know, that there's so many heavy metal fans lining up forever. But it because it was such a success, Stevie thought, and he was the one who put it on with another guy named Tim Johnson, who's a Mohawk, who is one of the programmers. He's now since retired, but was one of the programmers for the Museum of the American Indian. Those two guys, we call them the scoundrel, Stevie, and the scholar, Tim, and they came together and made this beautiful exhibit. They came to us to make the film. So, and they were very much part of it from beginning to end. So that's how it got made. But yeah, it's like all these hidden histories of America, all this, the revisionist stories are all wrong. They're all wrong. And to start retelling them is so exciting. That was what was exciting about Rumble, and coming to finding the keepers of the knowledge who actually know the real stories, and giving them space to say them.
Totally agreed. And you all know a true storyteller, because when you ask them a question, they're like, Catherine's like, well, let me tell you a story. That's what I'm talking about. So I wanted to bring up Ross Stansfield. He's a cinematographer, amazing person, and he loved Link. And I know he has, he's burning questions for you, Catherine. So Ross Stansfield, I'm handing you.
And Manda, hello.
Hey.
And Margaret, hello. And I sent you a note, which I don't know if you saw, but I started on the list of books you sent me, and they're Audible. So I am starting, doing the best I can. And Catherine, on your film, I found it several weeks ago because in college, I was kind of into music. So I liked Link Ray, and I had the album, and I knew the song, and I'm thinking, well, this sounds cool as hell. And then I found out about a whole bunch of other things that I didn't know, and artists I didn't know. So very informative. And it's great to bring this guy to where people find out about him and the whole movement that you're trying to talk about. So, you know, I also went to Woodstock. So that's where I've been. Met Muddy Waters also. And Booker T and the MGs. He was very nice guy. So that's enough.
Oh, thanks, Ross. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comment. So, Rhonda, I am going to turn it over to you. I know there's some things in the chat that I don't know if anyone wants to ask Catherine anything specifically or directly, but I'm just going to turn it over to you so you can manage that part of it.
Okay. Melissa was able to post The End of the Line, The Women of Standing Rock by Shannon Kring. Should also be on your viewing list. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. If you do want to speak, there's the reaction button. I believe there's the hand icon. But it's easy tonight, so you can just go ahead and chat as you'd like here. I have another one. Okay, Melissa also mentioned Minari as a foreign film. Oh, that's right. No one in the US speaks multiple languages or code switches between cultural heritages. So we have that comment. And thank you to Neil and John JD for mentioning Black and Green book, which is the fight for civil rights in Northern Ireland and Black America. He also posted that it is available on Amazon. So that's really great. You can also return to watch Rumble again on Amazon Prime. That's available too. I'm a music lover and also a dancer, and I've been through different various music stages in my life, so it was just really beautiful to capture so many great icons all talking in one space and giving the history and their love of music all at once. And I'm so grateful and thankful, so I'm blessed to be here with you. We can go on. We can go on with our next question. Manda, you have number 3?
Yeah, no, I have, it looks like Melissa and Spring both have their hands raised.
Okay.
So, Spring, let's go with you and then we'll go to Melissa.
Okay.
I think mine is a quick question. It goes with the how Manda opened tonight's discussion with showing the video of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry speaking with Oprah. So I'm just curious, with Catherine being from Canada and actually being part of, am I correct that, isn't that part of the British royal?
Yes, we're a colony. Yes, we're a colony.
And just curious, as you know, because no one, I shouldn't say that. I know for a fact that most Black Americans, I won't say most, but most Black Americans are just not even surprised. People are going like, oh my God. And we're like, yeah, but of course, that's, you know, that's how, you know, the whole slavery system and everything in the US was based out of, you know, what came out of Britain. So I mean, so we're just not surprised at all that these questions came up, that the pressures were different, that they didn't want to even get a poor baby a title, whatever. You know, we're just not surprised at any of this. So I'm curious as a Canadian, are you surprised?
That's a really great question. I think Canadians are starting to confront. I mean, in Canada, the biggest and most important movement going on right now is coming from in Indigenous people, in terms of the importance for our country, and the Indigenous women are leading all of that, and it causes everyone to reassess everything. And the colonizers, Britain, colonized Indigenous people in such a different way than in the United States, but it's horrific and racist at its core. And so those truths are very present in our country right now. So no one's surprised. French Canadians, I live in Montreal, so French Canadians are like, they can't stand the British. They don't want them. They were at war with them, and they were like, because the British are like, we're superior and everyone else is not. And so French Canadians are like, blah. So they can't stand the monarchy and never could. And so there's a very small part of Canada that still really loves it. And the rest of us, I don't know, we don't really know what to do with it. We don't really know what to do. And no one's surprised at all that they're racist. They're fundamentally racist. So, but I speak from a particular position all the time, not position, from a particular group, like an Indigenous husband. I live in Montreal in Quebec. And I confess, I don't really know what white Canadians writ large think. I mean, I know there's a part of Canadians that absolutely love the monarchy, and they just love the whole. It's like they're like our Kardashians, really, basically. It's drama to watch. It's like an escapism, as if you could have money and dress like Princess Diana and all that. I mean, there's that aspect to it, but the dirty underside of everything that happened as they colonized Canada and colonized Indigenous people in particular is coming out so strongly right now. I can't imagine there's one Canadian that is surprised that they're so fundamentally racist.
Okay.
Maybe some of the older people. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that perspective, though. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. You know, and I don't really know the answer. Like, I know there's a lot of my mom loves the Queen, and she's Irish, and the Irish were completely oppressed by the British, but she just likes the Queen. I don't know. She likes the Queen.
Well, you know, actually, America uniquely loves the Queen. You know, America, they really are America's Kardashian, and that, you know, I think they all. I don't know, my lifetime, I feel like they always have been. You know, in that realm of just, for whatever reason, we're just enamored, you know, with the crown, so to speak. And
right.
And of course, you know about the dirty underside and that, but again, all that even still helps sells papers. So I think the papers are so, like they said, the story is created as much in America as it is over there, but it does seem somehow the press gets away with more. I don't know, maybe they don't get sued as much or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, so thank you for that.
It made me so sad, though. It just made me sad. I don't know if any of you felt or just felt it was fake, but at their wedding, I was like, oh my God, okay, you know, the first, you know, person of color, okay, this is good. This is good. It was all sort of a bit absurd, but maybe it was good. And then it's just all been so and you know, it all just reveals itself to be just all corrupt and awful and racist and terrible and everything that we actually know it is. But for a moment, I was in the fantasy of it. I was in Bridgerton or something, you know, for a moment.
I just I know. So I know Connie's like, So we had Melissa, then Connie, and I think Rhonda has some more.
Oh, thanks. Katherine, I just wanted you to, if you could tell us a little bit about kind of the allyship you brought to get Rumble made. We're getting a lot of questions about how dare you tell that story kind of thing with certain filmmakers. And I think it's very important for us to be intentional if we're telling another story of, or how are we engaging a full piece of it. So what was your approach to that with making Rumble in particular?
Wow, truth of it is it's a village to make a film. But the way we look at it, I suppose, was Stevie was the main producer, and Stevie Salas, the Apache guitarist, and Tim was the executive producer, and they relied on me to piece things together. But trust you me, they were full on in the room all the time, and so was my husband, and so was Purifay, who's one of the main people in the film. Like, I guess documentary film people have different ways they make films, but the way we make films is that we never shame anybody, and not just that the people central to the film have to be part of the process and leading their story and have control over their story, not in a way that they can have final say for edits. Because sometimes people like, I don't like my face like that, or I don't look good. I know, not that she would ever do that. She's not at all like that. But it was very important for us that she be in the edit suite. It was super, and Stevie was very much a part of making the film, as was Tim. So it was a group process to make the film. So, and producing is a very particular thing, and executive producing is deciding who's going to be in, what's going to happen. And I'm like, we used to talk about it a bit like this, like women are like, no, there's hunters and gatherers, and not all women are gatherers. There's all kinds of hunter women who make films that are like hunters, but there's all kinds of women who are like gatherers, and I'm in the gatherer department, and in a collective department of gatherers. And so we had a lot of gatherers, a lot of women worked on that film. And Purifay, who's central to the story of the blues part, was a gatherer over many decades of gatherings. So we followed her gathering, and she was leading us where we were gathering. And so my job was to gather. In terms of the actual point of view of the film, is very much between Stevie, myself, and Purifay, I would say, is how that she's one of the main subjects of the film, and he's the main driving force behind it from a producing point of view. And my job was just kind of to, as women often do, and I don't want to stereotype women, but we do it well, is make a group work and bring, as Monda does, bringing voices all in. And so that's another way of directing, and not like it was my way or the highway. So in that spirit is how Rumble was made, very much so. That's why it took 5 years.
5 years ain't bad. It's not bad at all. It's like a sprint.
I don't know if that answers your question. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. I think
I just think it's like you have to. Yeah, I guess every film's made a bit different depending on who people are and how they make things. Their creative process is, but the creative process, if there's no, I don't know. Yeah, it's about having the people with authority be able to be central to the creative process, and that's how you have to set it up.
Yeah, thank you.
Connie.
So I want to make a comment about what you just said, Catherine, which was great, and it was such a great question, Melissa. I have such a challenge when people feel that a non-person of color can't make a film about people of color, or can a person of color make a film that features non-people of color. And to me, that's always such a challenge. There have been, I don't agree with that. I agree that when you're doing the research, when you're immersing yourself, you should be exposing yourself to all the people who have the answers, and they have the stories, and it's part of the research. So I know that is kind of the popular thing to say, that, oh, if you can't do it authentically if you're not. And I just happen to not agree. And I am so in the minority with that, I have found, and I'm surprised by it. But I would write a film about little boys if I thought, if I found them fascinating and wanted to write about them, I could do that. And I'm not a little boy. So, I still could do it. So I wanted to make a comment about one of the things that Sid said, and I wanted to just provide a clarification as well, because Sid, I completely agree with everything that you said. And I wanted to clarify my comments. I don't think that everybody who's doing the work in diversity is doing it to check the box, not at all. I think that what happens is, when I go in, I have to assess where they are on the scale and see if they are the organization that is reluctantly being dragged along. And even if that's the case, then my job is to be that bridge and try to get them to understand why it's important work and how it will benefit their organization and even their bottom line. But people who are like you, Sid, and I have so many role models who early in my career were not people of color, who brought me along in the entertainment industry, who believed in me and felt exactly like what you said. They were looking to appoint strong people of color, strong women of color into different positions, groom them, teach them the tricks of the trade. One of them was on last month, or when the last Healing Chronicles was. Libby Gill was one of my first mentors. And I mean, she took me through the ranks. It was, from Columbia TriStar to Turner to Oprah. She was just opening the door wherever she went to make sure that I had opportunities. But the people who do that, people like you, they didn't need Black Lives Matter to make them do that. That was not necessary. To me, what happened with George Floyd and things like that, what that does is shine a light on things that we might not understand are going on behind the scenes. We might understand a piece of it, but not the depth of it. So for me, the people who already had a heart and character and integrity to promote and to be inclusive, that was just more educational. And it was educational for many Black people. I'll be honest with you, not every Black person knows how bad it is for every other Black person. I mean, it was educational for all of us, although for most of us, we had certainly an inkling. But for the people who are like you and others that I know who are inclusive, they were inclusive all along the way. It wasn't like, Black lives do matter. Oh my gosh, I should hire one. It's not that. It's not that. This was their character all along. So I was, kind of responding to what we were talking about, Catherine, when you were initially talking about, do we really see, is this going to be systemic change? For those who were already there, they were already there. I mean, this may give them a reason to do it or allow them to promote more or, give more opportunities. But if they weren't thinking that way, most of them won't even check the box if they weren't thinking that way. They didn't agree with it then, they don't agree with it now. Or if they're forced to do it right now, they do the very least. Like you were saying, the people, we've got all these scripts in development. No, thought at all about actually moving them from development to production, but we can say we've got them in development. For the people who are there, that's where they are. So I do think that, with regard to the people who are doing the right thing, they're not doing it just because of the movement. They're not. I don't think. I think they would have done the right thing. There's just more opportunities right this moment for them to do the right thing, is how I see it.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are a few things that you have to do though now, which is maybe, I don't know if it's going to result in better things, but you have to mind your P's and Q's a little bit, like they say. And like, for instance, what I find so great, which we were always doing, which I'm sure all of us here were always doing, but now it's like, when you're doing a documentary, you make sure you look for Black and brown women, Black and brown men, like other not white people to interview as experts. Like look for them, search them out, like make sure that on your screen you have, that's who's there. And I think people sort of know that that's a thing you have to do now. Like you just can't have a whole film with white guys. Like I've been working with the Germans recently on a documentary series. And literally their list of interview people were all white guys. And I was like, okay, dudes, we can't, okay, dudes, no, we're not doing that. That's not gonna happen, boys, So, and so they, they're older German guys, but they're like, oh, okay, well, oh, right, of course, oh, right. And they're, and so they changed, but, there's we can call out this thing now as a, there's like, you don't know what to call out before necessarily. Now I know, okay, no, this is how these are things you have to do. These are things you can do. There's things you can do, which just makes me so happy. There's things we can do in our daily lives and in our practices and in our times. And like you mentioned earlier about calling out that deeper level of calling out, like you're racist, that's microaggressive racist. You can't say that. That's not cool. That is happening. I see that with my daughters. They call it out, and it's so wonderful to see. Maybe those things will stick. And then maybe these certain things like on camera, like maybe it's going to stick, that you better have not just white people you better not have just white people as your experts or as your people. You better not. So I hope that stuff sticks at least.
Thank you. Yeah, I do too. I'm hopeful. I mean, and now they're attacking our Asian brothers and sisters due to this COVID piece. And it's just, again, when I talk about the steps backwards, it's utterly ridiculous in my opinion. Does anyone, we're out of time, but does anyone have any more questions for Katherine? And Miss Margaret, I gotta ask you to, lend us some of your wisdom. You've been sitting back and listening and absorbing, and I know you have something to say.
You probably are correct. But you're right. I have been sitting back, listening, just absorbing this wonderful bank of brilliant people. Katherine, thank you so much. And Connie, your remarks, and Neil and John, your remarks. It's amazing all the things that you don't know, and you don't even know that you don't know them. And yet on a Zoom call like this, I think all of us are the wiser because of all of the input that I've heard. And we started talking about white fragility and white supremacy and white culture. And all of my life, those are issues that have played a big part in my life. And I can't think that what we have, especially in America with racism, is so embedded in the culture. It is the culture. It's like a threaded Afghan. And you can't pull apart one thread without all of it just unraveling. White people don't want it to unravel because it is the foundation upon which every single democratic ideal is based upon. Mm-hmm. And so when you disrupt that culture, when you pull it apart, like we are all trying to do, to reconstitute it into something more just and more fair, you get people pulling against it. I don't know how to solve it. All I know is that what we're talking about has to be a beginning point. And yet I've seen that beginning point so often in my life, only to be, just really horribly disappointed because of what I thought was going to happen for just a brief few moments in history. And then it all fell apart again. And so all of us are working on something that is, I don't know what the term is that I want to use. I don't see anything really positive happening on a large scale for a long time because people are fighting back. Because what are they without whiteness? How can you obliterate a white culture? How can you when for many people, that's all they have, their whiteness, which brings us white fragility. Whether it's the white fragile woman who has been throughout all of my history, the bane of my existence. Because simply like the woman in the Central Park, somebody had to tell her that. She had to have read about it. She must have known that just calling out a Black man especially something dreadful could have happened. And when you listen to her intonation, as if she were really frightened and in danger on the spot, that wasn't born in her, that was bred in her. And it's a history that goes back to the first time a white man raped a slave woman. And it continues because a Black life had no value. A Black man had no value. Women, white women had some value, but not like white men. And this white man culture is as difficult to disband than anything I know. Just ask hashtag 45. That's who we're talking about. Catherine mentioned the Little Rock 9 group. And Little Rock 9 was just a little thing compared with all of the white angry faces that you've seen throughout history from the very beginning. I think of Ruby Bridges, a little 6-year-old, first grade, and all of those regurgitated faces. I think she was like 1964 when she was a first grader. The Little Rock 9, I believe, was mid-1950s, 1956 or 57. Then you can go back to the 50s. You can go back to Virginia closing an entire school system in one of the areas for 5 whole years, simply because a Black person wanted to go to a school that housed white people. And I'm probably talking more than what I wanted to say, but I don't know how we resolve this major problem that we have when white superiority is so embedded. It's like the blood in your body. How can you get rid of some of it and keep some of it? It's just difficult. And until all of us realize that, it's going to take, let me be very frank, it's going to be white people who will have to dismantle it. White people, white women and white men will have to dismantle it. Black people can't do it. White people have to do it, which is one of the reasons I felt so gratified with the participants when George Floyd was crucified. I saw more white people in the crowd protesting against injustice and equality than I'd ever seen in all of the marches I'd ever been to in my life. And so that gave me a lot of encouragement that perhaps, just perhaps, we might be this time going to do something that will be sustained forever and ever. Only time will tell. We'll see. But yes, yeah, there's Ruby Bridges I see on the screen now. Do you realize for an entire year, not a single person other than her teacher who volunteered to be with her spoke to her? She ate lunch by herself until her teacher found out she was not eating very well. So the teacher brought her lunch into the room. She did not play on the playground with the kids. She had to play by herself. How could you do this to a baby? How could you? There is something intrinsically evil in the hearts of white men and white women who permitted this to happen. And when I think about a Ruby Bridges by herself, I think of when the schools were integrated. I am so glad I didn't live during that time. I went to an all-Black school. I felt like a princess because each of my teachers were Black. They knew what Black meant. They knew who we were. I can't imagine being a 6-year-old with a teacher in Memphis, Tennessee, a white teacher, once they were integrated. And it's not that the white teachers were bad. The white teachers were a part of the culture that was embedded in the United States of America. They couldn't be any more than who they were. And as a result of that, I think of all of the little Black boys and girls harmed by white people who had no clue as to what race was all about, what white power was all about. They just thought they were doing something great to help these kids and doing it all wrong. And so until we all get our pages all on the same page to realize that a human body, regardless of the color, is still a human body with all of the humanity that should be bestowed upon them. When we reach that point, then I think we have had it made. I don't know when that will come.
Thank you, Miss Margaret. You, as you usually do, you have people in tears over here, and I explained to them that you know truth when you hear it, and it is absolute truth, and I always appreciate your insight, your wisdom, and your guidance, Catherine. Miss Margaret.
I think she's trying to say something. She's on mute, Miss Margaret.
Okay, Miss Margaret, you're on mute still. Okay. Unmute.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go.
I was saying, please don't cry. Please, that's not my point. My point is that everything I said is historically correct. You can read about it. You can talk with people who've lived it. You can talk with me. I've lived it. So don't cry. What you need to do is get out there and vote for the people who can make what we're trying to make actually happen. And you can't do it by being silent. I'm talking to the choir because those of you on this Zoom are already doing the things that will make a difference in the lives of people, no matter what the color is. And so I'm just asking you to stick with it, stick to it. And I think if we all do this together, no need to cry unless it's tears of joy. That's a different thing. So, but thank you for listening.
All right. So thank you, Miss Margaret. Catherine, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? This has been such a rich and powerful conversation, and I'm happy. You know, I'm full because you know we may be small in number, but the ability of all of us to make a difference in one way or another with the butterfly effect, we have it. We have the magic, and we know we can make it happen. So I'm although I'm disappointed with some of the things that are going on currently, I do truly believe that we can overcome it, and we will. So what say you?
I just want to say I'm so I love that you have an elder of such grace and brilliance as Miss Margaret and here. I don't want to even get anywhere near to closing things off, because she for me was the one was closing things off and saying the most profound things. But all I can say is I'm so grateful to be here, and I hope I can come and join every week and just be part of it. It's food for the soul that we all keep doing what we're doing, and everyone just seems so magnificent and so profoundly smart and involved and doing and not giving up. And and we all need that, to have that. I feel it now, actually. You know, I don't, you know, we're sometimes just by yourself working, and to have this moment, Wanda, that you offer this moment to give people a moment to recognize the people that they're allies to, and that we're all fighting in this fight together. It's really a real gift. Thank you so much. It really is a great gift. It's a beautiful thing you're doing, and I look forward to coming back and hearing all the. I've been to the other ones, but just on the watching on the YouTube. So I'd love to come back and just listen going forward. It's food for the soul. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, you're welcome anytime. Miss Rhonda, did you have anything you wanted to finish out with? My lovely co-host, thank you. I appreciate.
Yes, thank you for everyone for being here tonight. This has definitely been food for the soul, no doubt. We are going to have our upcoming event March 24th, and Monda can tell you a little bit about that. If you'd like, you can register. This is what I've discovered with this Zoom. When we do that register link and you click it again, it makes you register one more time. I've noticed those dates. There are numerous dates, but then not the date of the event. So that was my issue too. I was wondering what happened to Zoom. It's still there. As long as you go ahead and just resubmit your name, I guess Zoom registration will link you back into this room. So you could pass that on. to, that was really unusual tonight for the Zoom to do that, because it kind of did a freeze up, and it made, I thought I had to restart Zoom again. But I guess that's just how it's built. We are looking forward to all these upcoming film festivals, and we're so grateful and thankful to have Miss Sid Collins Walker here today. And yes, definitely, please look up, you can look her up. We're also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I live on Facebook. If you want to see me, you can. And we're so grateful for this beautiful evening. So thank you for reminding one another the story is the Healing Chronicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
And we seem to keep going to 9 o'clock. I may just stop fooling myself and say 7:30 because 7 to 9. This is what's happening. But even with the Zoom, if you're registered once, you can just use that same link, and the online event page gives you the dates of the upcoming topics. If there's a particular topic that is near and dear to you and you want to discuss on the Healing Chronicles, just let me know. We have topics going through September of this year, but willing to switch them around as germane. So I'm open to that. And again, I do think this community, some of the old school folks who have been here since the beginning, and some of these new faces, is good to see you, it's good to hear you, and we can do this together. So thank you all so very much. And Sky, thank you. Sky is with the Anne Arundel chapter of the NAACP, and it's good to see a lot of people in here who were quiet. Allison, I'm surprised I didn't hear from you today. Ken, I'm glad you joined us with the Baltimore International Black Film Festival. So there's a lot of good people here. Yolanda, thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate Sabrina, my producer in New York. Tally, you are the bomb.com. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you all, and Vanessa, thank you. So we will look forward to the next Healing Chronicles, if everything goes, if all goes well, and we will meet on the 24th of this month to talk about why our children keep picking the white doll from the doll test. So with that, I would like to wish you all a good evening. Thank you so much. I love you very dearly, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.